Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Forbidden Land podcast. Today's a special episode. We're taking a little break from the disgusting, um, underage sex trafficking ring. So, we're taking a little break from that to talk about an even more exciting topic: the Georgia gubernatorial race. This is a topic I was thinking about a lot this weekend. And I mean, I've been thinking about it passively up to this point, but I put a lot of thought into it this weekend. And especially with the recent thing where people are getting mad at Hassan Piker for saying that in over 2 years, he might not vote for Gavin Newsom. That he wants a third-party alternative. Very fair thing to say, by the way. Gavin Newsom presents as a blue MAGA style Democrat. He's very persuading, has a big personality, but like MAGA, he's got a lot of shit that's horrible about him that he covers with his vibrant, aggressive personality. He's not a very good dude and not a very good governor. He's one of those Democrat governors that's simply holding the office to prevent a Republican from unraveling the whole thing. So, not a great guy. But it got me thinking. There is a governor's race coming up in my home state of Georgia. I have been following the governor politic, local politics and stuff in my state since I was in high school, when Brian Kemp ran for election against Stacey Abrams. And, I remember my teachers hyping up Nathan Deal growing up, and one of my teachers was like, yeah, I actually met Nathan Deal once, and he was the governor before Kemp. Well, under Deal, the Secretary of State at the time was Brian Kemp, and the Secretary of State had control over the election board. And there were allegations at the time that by Stacey Abrams' team that he was wiping out Hispanic voters or people with Hispanic sounding names, anything that had a hyphen in it, stuff like that. He was just purging them from the voter rolls, leading right up to the election. And, that can be seen as a bit of a conflict of interest there, because he was the candidate running against Stacey Abrams. So, I don't know. There was a lot of controversy surrounding him winning the governor's race in 2018. And then 2022 was very tumultuous for him because he was caught in the Trump wave. Trump wanted David Perdue to win. Perdue obviously had the name recognition, considering Sonny Perdue used to be the governor of Georgia. So, he had that name recognition. He used to be the senator of Georgia before being defeated in the Senate race by, I believe, Jon Ossoff. So, pretty tumultuous elections. Trump was backing Perdue. Kemp was kind of just on his own, and people still went with Kemp anyways. And he won the governor's race despite Raphael Warnock winning his election against Herschel Walker. So, a bit of a split purple ticket. And, here we are 4 years later. And, while Jon Ossoff is up for re-election in the Senate, today I want to cover the potential candidates for the governor's race. Kemp can't run for a third consecutive term in the state of Georgia, and so it has to be somebody new. And, Stacey Abrams has already confirmed she's not going to run again. Thank God. I already thought it was a bad idea to run her again in 2022, which was a very unpopular opinion to hold. But I felt like she was just being used as a political punching bag by the Republicans too much. That the Republicans were kind of controlling the narrative around her too much, and I think that's why she lost by such large numbers. Um, especially considering Warnock won by a huge margin against Herschel Walker. So I don't know. I'm glad Stacey Abrams isn't running again. Although she is behind the scenes. Stacey Abrams' main job has been to register voters who are in frequently disenfranchised areas, low income areas, poor voters, rural voters who typically wouldn't be able to vote or couldn't make it to like the one polling station they have in their county, or just whatever the reason may be. She's been trying to go around to all these different communities and opening up passageways for them to be able to vote. So I do appreciate that she's doing that. It's nice when I get to say good things about Democrats for once. So let's get into it. The primaries are coming up, I believe, in May or June. I'll have to look into that again. Make sure you check your voter registration if you live in Georgia. Make sure it's still active. I know I checked it yesterday, and I am still an active voter in the state of Georgia. So make sure you check that. Check what district you live in. And when the election comes closer, you can view a sample ballot. It'll tell you everything that'll be on your ballot when you go to vote. And make sure you look at that, research what your options are if you're unsure. But the primary is coming up, and the current candidates that I deem the most important to talk about, obviously there's more candidates than this on both sides, and I've kind of narrowed it down to the ones that I think will be important, or I should at least mention. That's based on like how much percentage points they have in the polling right now, how much funding they're getting. So right now, what seems to be the front runner of the race is former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. She, worked in the White House under Biden. She claims she resigned. It's up in the air whether she resigned or if Trump fired her on his first day in office. It doesn't matter. She worked in the White House under the Biden administration. She works for the DNC. She was the mayor of Atlanta during a time where some very interesting stuff was going on. She was mayor of Atlanta during the George Floyd BLM protests. And that's something I kind of wanted to focus on her specifically. So I will mention she is anti-ICE. She signed executive orders preventing Atlanta detention centers from housing any ICE detainees, which I would say is a pretty good move. She tried to charge the officers involved with the shooting of Rayshard Brooks, the man who was sleeping in his car at a Wendy's, who was then shot by police in June 2020. She attempted to charge them, and the courts said no. So at least she tried. However, my big thing, and keep in mind she's the front runner by a lot. She will probably be the nominee. However, I want you to remember this, and this will be a huge hurdle to leap over for her. For progressives like me living in the state, progressives that I know, that I'm friends with, that live here, that I have mutuals with, that I know are against this. She is the person who proposed Cop City, or that Atlanta Police Training Center in Southeast Fulton, I think is where it is. She is the architect behind Cop City, and it's all laid out on her policing roadmap, the one APD community policing roadmap. She would build a new state-of-the-art public safety training academy, which is Cop City. And then also expand Operation Shield, which is a mass surveillance system across Atlanta. So I don't know what we think about that. I know personally I'm not super okay with it. I'm not really down with that kind of thing. I think it's you know, I mean, this was released almost 5 years ago now, but I'm not really cool with expanding the police state, with especially expanding the surveillance state. I'm not cool with wasting all this money on a new cop training center when clearly more police doesn't equal less crime. Uh, it's more like better material conditions for your constituents equals less crime, because people are less desperate and will thus be less willing to commit crimes that will uproot their life, or less likely to commit crimes to improve their material conditions. So I'm not a huge fan of her on that issue alone. And you can go and research more of her policies. I don't know if she's changed her mind on that kind of thing. I haven't seen anything that indicates that. She's kind of quiet on the campaign front, and I think it's because she knows that she's going to probably be the nominee for the Democratic Party. But that's one of my issues with her, is that she is one of the masterminds behind Cop City, or at least allocated funding to something like Cop City at the time, which is so strange, which is in like direct response to the BLM protests from the year prior. The second runner-up is an interesting pick, and it is former Republican Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, who was the lieutenant governor under Brian Kemp's first term. He is a Republican. He has renounced himself as a Republican, but I don't think he's changed his views enough to not still be Republican light. He worked for Brian Kemp, supposedly holds a lot of the same ideals as Brian Kemp, is probably not that far off of him. The only reason he isn't a self-proclaimed Republican is because of the Trump interference in the 2020 election aftermath. The call with Brad Raffensperger, the attacks towards the state of Georgia after certifying the election results. I know that that's why he's renounced his Republican Party membership. But that doesn't change the fact that if he became the governor, he would just be a center-right, moderate Democrat. And for that reason, I do not like him very much. And I also think if you ran him against the Republicans in the election, he would lose by a large margin, because people are going to see that and go, if I wanted a Republican, I'd vote for the Republicans. That's just how it works. They're not going to go with Republican light. They're going to go with Republican classic. So I think that's kind of why I don't like him very much. And he's second place on the list. So not a good look, especially because some of these next few people on the Democrat side, I would much more prefer. So next up is Michael Thurmond, who has a very extensive political journey. This is a crazy fact I found out while researching him. He's the first black Georgia assemblyman elected since the Reconstruction era. Dude, that's insane. That's like a 100-year gap. That's nuts. That was in 1986. 1994, he was appointed to head DFACS under Governor Zell Miller. 1998, he was elected to the Georgia Labor Commissioner position. And then in 2016, he was elected to DeKalb County CEO. Decent amount of political experience. Whether he'd be a good governor, I'm not sure. I know he doesn't have a whole lot of name recognition, so it's definitely an uphill battle for him. But lots of political experience. So we'll see how that goes. If they have a debate, I'd be willing to hear him out. I'm not too familiar with his policies. I couldn't find much. But I would assume he's just a run-of-the-mill Democrat. Next up, and this is my personal favorite, and who I will personally probably be voting for in the primary, which is Rua Roman, who is a Georgia House representative from the 97th district, which is Duluth and Norcross kind of area, northern Gwinnett type of area. She's a Palestinian born in the country of Jordan. Came here when she was 7 years old. She's pro-choice, which is good because I hate the heartbeat bill here. I will not give away too many details, but I do know of somebody that had to cross state lines a while ago to get an abortion that she desperately needed. So I'm not a fan of the heartbeat bill. She's pro-protecting voting rights. Love that. They've been trying to pass voting related laws here constantly. The Republicans hate voting rights because if everybody could vote, if everybody had a readily accessible ability to vote, like early voting and voting by mail, then the Republicans have a stronger chance of losing. She wants to expand healthcare access. I believe what I read is she wants to expand our Medicare system and make it more affordable. I'm all for it. I hope she goes the whole way and advocates for Medicare for all, but you know what? I like where her head's at, and I like where she's headed. And she was also, this is also why I really like her, she was picked by the Uncommitted movement to speak at the 2024 DNC. If you remember, she was specifically denied speaking at the DNC. And, yeah, I mean, look, man, she's Palestinian. She cares for, Palestinian sovereignty. She doesn't agree with the genocide in Gaza. And so I like her for that reason. So if she's still in the primary by the time voting comes around, I will be voting for her. But honestly, my second pick, if she does drop out, is this next guy. And it's Jason Esteves, who's the former Georgia State Senator from District 35, which is Smyrna, kind of west metro Atlanta area. Like a very large district, by the way. He was endorsed by the Jonesboro Teamsters Union. He is polling kind of low, but his campaign funding is on par with Bottom's funding, if not a little higher, from time to time. He's pro-Medicaid expansion. He's pro-choice. He proposed legislation that would bar private equity firms from buying homes. Dog. He's fighting BlackRock. He wants to lower the cost of living here, make houses more affordable. He opposes Buckhead secession from Atlanta, which you might think is kind of a weird thing for me to add in there. But the reason why it's not a good idea for Buckhead to secede from Atlanta is because it would devastate the residents and the businesses living there, because they would take all that revenue, all that tax money with them. Schools would have to redistrict. It would basically destroy anybody even close to low income in Atlanta. So it's just not a good idea. And Buckhead is mostly white and wealthy, and that's kind of why they want to pull away from Atlanta, because they're white and wealthy. I mean, come on. That's why, white wealthy people aren't huge fans of places like Atlanta because they're racist. So that's why they want to secede. He's pro expanding the U.S. Supreme Court. I was so shocked when I read this. But I'm with him all the way. We should pack the courts. We should expand it. It's stupid that the Supreme Court has 9 permanent members who are in that job until death, because it essentially confirms the whatever party is in office, and it just so happens that enough Supreme Court justices die during that term. It basically locks down a political party's control over the judiciary for like decades, for at least a generation. And that's what's happening right now. The large conservative majority on the Supreme Court right now, that's exactly what's happening at this very moment, you know. And God forbid one of the old conservative justices dies, because now you've locked it in even longer. You know, God forbid one of the Democrat or liberal justices dies. Now you've got like a super conservative majority on the court. So I think, you know, expanding the Supreme Court is a good first step, and I'm glad this guy is pro doing that. He does have one thing, and it's that he supported Biden after his disastrous Trump debate, and then endorsed Kamala Harris. Now, if I'm going to indict all these people for endorsing Kamala Harris, we ain't going to have any candidates talk. But I think backing Biden after his disastrous debate was a huge mistake. And that definitely makes him look, that makes me look at him a certain way. That he seems to be a bit of a Democratic Party loyalist. Think for yourself, man. You're a local Georgia politician. Have some flexibility in your viewpoints. But if Roman's not in the race, I will be voting for this guy, Jason Steves. They're both polling pretty low. I know Roman's polling at like 1%, but still, I have hope. You know, I like these two candidates. I can tell why she's running for this, just trying to put her name out there, make herself more recognizable, put herself on a more statewide stage. So I am, you know, I'm glad she's doing this. All right. Now, the Republicans. On the Republican side, it's really weird. And I left off some names, but I put the ones that I thought were the most important, which are 3 men that are currently in the Georgia state government under Kemp. And then there's one particular guy in the race that's really odd. But I saved him for last. So the current front runner is Burt Jones. Burt Jones is the current lieutenant governor. Complete demon. Like one of the worst. He's worse than Jeff Duncan by a long shot. He's endorsed by Trump, endorsed by Turning Point USA. He is pro-life. Like heavily supports the heartbeat bill. You know, he did serve in the Georgia State Senate for a while. So he's been in politics for quite a long time. But his record is just so gross. He's an oil executive and an heir to the Jones Petroleum Company. So already he's compromised by the oil industry. You know, the oil industry goes, he didn't even have to be paid off. He's part of it. He's going to favor any oil initiatives because he profits off of that. Or at least his family will. And then he will because he's the heir to that company. He's a member of the Georgia Freedom Caucus. Wants to prohibit teaching systemic racism in school. Ah, yes. Georgia, one of the main players in the civil rights era, in the Reconstruction era, in the Civil War era, in slavery in general. Ah, yes, we just shouldn't teach anything about how the system is used to intentionally, pull black people farther down the ladder, in terms of, wealth accumulation and progress in general. We just shouldn't talk about that, obviously. So stupid. It's guys like him who think that teaching systemic racism is like a personal attack on white people like him. It's not. I mean, really, it is an attack on specifically him because he's part of the government. But, it's literally just teaching about how certain laws and systems in place in our society are designed specifically to target black people based on like statistical data we have about how certain groups, participate in certain things and all this, like the drug war, the war on drugs. Nixon specifically chose the drugs he chose to put harsher sentences on, knowing that statistically, black people and anti-Vietnam War protesters partook in those drugs more than other drugs. So look at the sentencing difference between crack and cocaine, and then look at the statistical data of the era of what, demographics were using which drug the most. There you go. He wants to stop you from learning about stuff like that. That everything's all hunky-dory and everything's fine. That's what he wants. He wants to allow teaching biblical scripture in high schools. Whatever happened to the separation of church and state? Whatever happened to people practicing other religions? Don't people practice non-biblical religions? Some people don't practice a religion at all. Why is it the government's place to force a certain religion on kids? If you want to teach them the Bible, open a private school and then teach them the Bible there. Personally, I don't want my children being indoctrinated with the Bible in school. If I want to teach them the Bible, I'll teach them it on my own. You know what I mean? I don't need K through 12. Or I guess I should say 9 through 12, teaching them that stuff. But I guess at that point they would be old enough to know, like, oh, I probably shouldn't. I should probably take this with a grain of salt. Also, what will it even be, like an elective or something? You can't just mandate every kid has to take a Bible class. Like that would get struck down by a circuit court so fast on the basis of it violating the freedom of religion. Weirdly enough, he wants to increase animal shelter funding. You know what? That's like the only good thing on his whole list. Is he wants to increase animal shelter funding. Wow. Him and Kristi Noem have ideological differences, I guess. Yeah, that's like the only good thing on his list. He wants to abolish the state income tax. I'm obviously not super down with that. I think state income taxes are quite important if I actually want my state to run properly, if I want my roads to be built. People think that the federal government, your federal income taxes go towards like every road and all that stuff. It's like, no, your state taxes are the ones that go to like state highways, and then your local taxes go to like the road next to your house, stuff like that. A lot of these taxes are very important. And also, I want the state income tax, but can my tax money go towards document production, please? Why do I have to keep paying for like documents, like registration renewal? Why do I have to pay for that? Why do I have to pay for, if I need a new copy of my birth certificate, why do I have to pay like $50 for that? Oh, I need a new social security card? Pay like $20 for that. Why? Why am I doing that? I want my taxes to actually go towards stuff, not, be sent out into the void and it gets sent to some bullshit like a corporate subsidy that we gave, or like a fucking corporate tax credit we gave to some company that's going to move to the state, mooch off our resources and then, you know, book it out the state 6 years later. He supported the Riley Gaines Act, which is the bill that restricts transgender athletes from participating in sports, which, if you'll remember, Riley Gaines is the historically largest loser on Earth, permanently just a massive loser. Like, it isn't even like a trans person stole the gold from her, you know, took first place and she was all in second place, which, even if that was the case, like, suck it the fuck up, you know. But no, she like tied for, I think, like 5th place with a trans person. Like, oh, boo hoo. Grow up. That's her whole personality. That's her entire media personality, is I am the biggest fucking loser of all time, and I'm going to make it everybody else's problem. So, you know, obviously I don't agree with Burt Jones on restricting transgender athletes from participating in sports. Might I remind everybody, by the way, everyone who's making a big deal out of that, they represent less of the population than redheads. So, fucking stop. Also, a lot of these athletes, the hormones they're on, give them the same advantages that any of the cis people they're participating with have. They're on an equal playing field at that point. I don't want to get into the weeds of it, but, like, my God, Riley Gaines, the biggest fucking loser of all time. Last but not least, this is something I didn't know for some reason. I don't know how I've never heard about this, but in the fake electors case that Fani Willis indicted Trump and his team on, Burt Jones is co-conspirator number 8, who ended up not being indicted. He is co-conspirator number 8. So remember, Brad Raffensperger and, you know, Jeff Duncan, they all got caught up, even Kemp to some extent, got caught up in the whole, oh, you guys didn't give Trump Georgia and you betrayed your party and all this, just for Kemp to pick Burt Jones, this like radical Trumper who, if he was sitting in the Secretary of State seat, would have probably been like, yes, sir, Mr. President, 11,000 yada yada votes coming right up for you. This dude's such a clown ass. He's such a joke. Yeah, like, what a fucking joke. Speaking of Brad Raffensperger, he is the current Georgia Secretary of State, and he's also running in this race. He's not polling very well. I believe that's because somebody else is polling ahead of him now that he's entered the race, but from the polls I've seen, he's not polling super well. But he was before somebody else entered the race. He is the guy from the, quote, perfect phone call with, end quote, with Trump after the 2020 election. If you're wondering what I'm talking about this. It'll ever load.
Both of which are criminal fines, and you can't let it happen, and you are letting it happen. You know, I mean, I'm notifying you that you're letting it happen. So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state, and flipping the state is a great testament to our country, because, you know, there's just it's a testament that they can admit to a mistake, or whatever you want to call it. If it was a mistake, I don't know. A lot of people think it wasn't a mistake. It was much more criminal than that. But it's a big problem in Georgia, and it's not a problem that's going away. I mean, you know, it's not a problem that's going away. And we got to.
President, this is Ryan. We're looking into every one of those things that you mentioned.
It really is awesome that Donald Trump wasted an hour of his weak, pathetic, trash life begging the Georgia Secretary of State to find him just enough votes to win the state of Georgia in the election. it's so nice that he wasted an hour of his useless, pathetic life on his hands and knees begging the Secretary of State to find votes for him. And then when they did the hand count, a lot of people don't remember this part. When they did the hand count in Georgia, he lost by an even bigger margin, by like 12,000 something votes. So get fucked. He supports Raffensperger supports voter ID laws. Boo. We do not support voter ID laws. Make the voter IDs free and, applicable online if you're going to make them mandatory. Make them free. I'm not paying $120 for a voter ID. Let me use my driver's license or make the voter IDs free, baby. That's what the people have the issue with, is that they're too expensive. That this prices out a lot of people who can't afford the fee that comes along with getting a voter ID. So, boo, that's all I gotta say. He might have stood up to Trump, but he's still a Republican. Stacey Abrams alleged that he purged Hispanic voters en masse during the recent governor election. And then, because of him standing up to Trump, he was censured by a group of Republicans. And then the state legislature voted to remove him as chair of the state election board, and then made the state legislature the new entity in control of the state election board. So, damn. Now the state legislature is in control of the state election board, which is kind of insane. I wonder how the state legislature would have held up to demands from Trump to overturn the election. All right, our next superstar on the list is Chris Carr, who is the current Georgia Attorney General. He's been the Attorney General since 2016. He used to be the chief of staff for the former senator from Georgia, Johnny Isakson. U.S. Senator, by the way. He served under Nathan Deal, and he's known for being one of the 18 Republicans who sued to invalidate the Affordable Care Act as unconstitutional. So he's anti-Affordable Care Act, meaning he would probably go nowhere near healthcare reform. He defended the heartbeat bill that restricts abortion to before 6 weeks. So, pro-life, I guess. I always say pro-life in quotations, because these guys will be like, no, you have to have the baby, but don't you fucking dare ask for financial assistance in taking care of that baby. Don't you dare. Oh, you can't afford childcare and your kid is sick? Fuck your baby. But you already knew that going into it, that, you can't afford to take care of a kid. It was a mistake, to save your own life and the lives of those around you. You have to abort this child. A heavy decision. Yeah, this guy goes, sorry, I can't let you do that. Goes against my moral values as a fake conservative Christian man. So, pretty gross. He is the chair of Republican Attorneys General Association, or he was the chair of the Republican Attorneys General Association, which on January 6th sent out robocalls to storm Washington and take back the election. He then resigned about 3 months later because he disagreed with the robocalls. It took him 3 months to make that decision. Oh, man. Yeah, took him 3 months to decide, maybe I don't fuck with these insurrectionist robocalls. What an idiot, dude. What a fucking idiot. Yeah, so that's Chris Carr. He's probably not gonna win the nomination. He's kind of a no-name, and I mean, he's a carbon copy of all the other Republicans on this list. He has nothing that makes him stand out as unique, other than that he has connections to Johnny Isaacson and Nathan Deal, which are, you know, somewhat popular figures in the state, but not really. So I don't really see him winning the nomination. So the big toss-up here is Rick Jackson, who's a healthcare executive. I don't have any bullet points on him other than that he's a healthcare executive, because look, you should know that this guy just wants to be the governor. He literally just wants to be the governor because he doesn't want Medicare expansion. He doesn't want healthcare reform statewide. He's an Alpharetta-based healthcare executive, and any kind of like, you know, healthcare reform in the state would just, he doesn't want that. He wants to remain as profitable as possible and mooch as much money as he possibly can off of the people of the state of Georgia. The reason why he's important right now is because as of the latest polling from Real Clear Politics and Race to the White House, which are two polling companies, they have polled Rick Jackson either just below Burt Jones or higher than Burt Jones, making him a genuine contender for the Republican nomination for the gubernatorial race. I don't know who could have seen that coming. I don't know if it's just because the Kemp government is so unpopular. Since he's entered the race, he's either polled a few points lower than Burt, or he's polled a lot higher than him, or he's polling like right at the same numbers. Like this one poll shows he's at 19.4% and Jones is at 20.5%. The poll after that, Real Clear Politics, which was taken on February 11th of this year, shows that he's polling at 20% and Jones at 19%, while Raffensperger is trailing behind at 9.5% on that newer poll. So, I mean, I don't even know what to say. Like, and the other candidates, like Chris Carr, is at like 5%. He ain't winning the nomination. But like Raffensperger was kind of putting up a bit of a fight before he entered the race. Jackson entered the race on February 3rd. He's a latecomer. If I had done this episode 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have even known who he was. So this is kind of a crazy potential upset that this random like healthcare executive bursts into the race and just wipes the board. I mean, think about it. Burt Jones is endorsed by Donald Trump, the President of the United States. Turning Point USA, or more specifically Turning Point Action, which is their nonprofit. So that's two powerhouses, the president and the company that was owned by Charlie Kirk. He's also endorsed by the majority leader in the Georgia State Senate, 25 other state senators, 38 state representatives, another former state representative. Two former state representatives. Jason Aldean, a famous country singer, and Mark Richt, who is the former head football coach at UGA for the Georgia Bulldogs. That guy's endorsed by all those people, and this random healthcare executive might genuinely boot him out of the race. I also love this detail that Chris Carr is endorsed by 53 county sheriffs because he's the attorney general. Chris Carr has put away a lot of people, by the way. I was reading up on him. He's indicted a lot of officials in the state. Like, it's kind of nuts. I don't know. There's something about Burt Jones being endorsed by all these people that's just so funny to watch him basically almost get booted from the race. But we'll see in a few months. I mean, the primary's a little bit away, but man, that would be so nuts. So the primary is on May 19th, and the general will be on November 3rd. Yeah, Rick Jackson owns Jackson Healthcare, which rakes in about $3 billion a year in revenue. He's self-funding his whole campaign, or most of it. Huh. I don't know why he's so high in the polls. That is so bizarre. Maybe people just don't like Burt Jones that much and they want like an outsider businessman, maybe? Huh. That's so weird. Apparently he grew up pretty poor and was a foster kid. So maybe he's like kind of, coming from nothing here. Maybe that's why people like him. I don't know. To sum it up. God, that's bright. To sum it up. On the Republican side, I would say that, Burt Jones being the nominee would definitely be challenging for the Democrats to beat because he's a known face. People like him, I think. And I think it would be a challenge to beat him. He's not to be underestimated, despite how horrible he is. And maybe the Trump connection will destroy him in the election. It seems to be going that way for the midterm right now. But if Rick Jackson becomes the nominee, I have a feeling that it's not going to go very well for the Republicans. Like, he might smash out the primary, but I think he's such an unknown. The Democrats would have to really fumble it, I think, to not beat Rick Jackson. I mean, I can only see him wanting to be the governor for one reason, and it's the expansion of the Medicaid system or expansion of any kind of healthcare reform. On the Democrat side, I'm worried about Keisha Lance Bottoms being the nominee. I know she wasn't super popular in Atlanta by the time she left office. Most Atlanta mayors are usually somewhat despised by the time that they leave office. I used to work up there, so I used to hear it from a lot of people. But I don't know. Another thing I found out about Lance Bottoms while I was researching her is that her husband is one of the executive members of Home Depot, which is an Atlanta-based company. So he's like a top-ranking executive at Home Depot. So I don't know. I personally, I think that gives a corporation like Home Depot too much political power. If she became the governor, it kind of gives Home Depot full access to preferential treatment from the governor's office. And I don't know how I feel about that because Home Depot, a lot of their founders are, not a lot, but one of their founders heavily donates to the Republican Party. I just don't know if I like that kind of close control of the governor's office that they would have. I hope that the nominee is Roman. If it's not Roman, I hope it's Steves. If it's Lance Bottoms, then I might have to just see how she responds to questions about police reform and Cop City and all this stuff, and I'll see what I feel about her. But I'm obviously not going to vote for her in the primary. So yeah, go out and vote. Remember to check your voter registration. Literally just look it up on Google. Georgia voter registration. It's one of the top links It's gonna have you enter your last name, your date of birth. It's really simple information. You're not putting your whole social security number in there, so if it's asking for that, you're on the wrong website. But yeah, I mean, go on there, check your voter status, make sure you're registered to vote, check your voter ID card, which will tell you what district you live in. Your sample ballot closer to the election will tell you who your options are. For general elections, it's good to check that because sometimes they will ask you questions on there. Like they'll have petitioned ballot measures that they want you to read out and answer if you want to pass them or not. So it is a good thing to check those sample ballots to make sure you're read up on what you're actually voting on. I will say I have voted in every election except for this last one. I didn't vote for my state rep because she won in a landslide. But yeah, I've voted in like 6 elections now, so it's kind of fun. And I have a bunch of stickers sitting in a box. It's kind of fun. Go out and vote in May if you live in Georgia. All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you want to support this podcast, go to patreon.com/forbiddenlandpod. If you want to listen to this podcast on other platforms, you can go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you want the video podcast but in audio form for some fucking reason, it's on YouTube Music. I don't know why people would even want that. Or we're on the Samsung refrigerator with the smart screen on it, the smart fridge. Yeah, see y'all on Friday with the normal news and normal episode. Peace.